Now, we heard the term border czar time and again on the US campaign trail. Donald Trump kept referring to Kamala Harris as one. 7 speakers at the Republican National Convention towed the same line, and interviewers held Harris responsible for the border crisis. All of this when Harris wasn't actually appointed the role. She was tasked to address the root causes of migration. Yes, the border comes in the purview of that, but officially the job still lied on the shoulders of Homeland Security. The reason we are telling you all of this tonight is because in the upcoming administration, that is Donald Trump's, there will be an official border czar. Trump has appointed Tom Homan for the role. In a post, the president-elect said, and I'm quoting, "There is nobody better at policing and controlling our borders. Tom will be in charge of all deportation of illegal aliens back to their country of origin." 62-year-old Homan is well versed with the immigration crisis as well as working with Trump. He started his career as a police officer with Border Patrol, then became a special agent with the former Immigration and Naturalization Service. Over the course of his long career, he managed to rise the ranks and ultimately become the deputy director. In 2017, Trump appointed him as the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Homan served for a year and a half before retiring. But during that time, the number of immigrants arrested soared by 40% compared to the year before that. Now, Homan is also an author of Project 2025. It is a presidential transition project in its own words that's drafted by many of Donald Trump's own aides, some of whom are expected to be part of his next presidency, like Homan. The Democrats have called the project an extremist vision of America. Trump has fully distanced himself away from the project. Now, to understand how the border policy will look like under Homan, we revisited some of his recent statements. During the 2024 Republican National Convention, he said, and I'm quoting, "I have a message for the millions of illegal aliens who Joe Biden allowed to enter the country in violation of federal law. Start packing because you are going home." During an interview for CBS News, he categorically said workplace enforcement operation will be necessary. We find a lot of trafficking cases where women and children perform forced labor to pay off smuggling fees. In the same interview, he shared his vision of immigration policy, where he said, and I'm quoting again, "If I'm in charge of illegal immigration, my priorities are public security threats and national security threats first." The interviewer asked if others can follow, to which he said, "Absolutely, it's a crime to enter any country illegally." Now, Trump has promised a zero-tolerance approach for the border. He has vowed to launch the largest deportation in American history, something Homan has gone on record to support. He's also promising to hire 10,000 Border Patrol agents and says that he will ask Congress to give all agents a 10% pay raise. All right, to get us some perspective on this story, Lincoln Mitchell is joining us on this broadcast from New York. Mr. Mitchell is a political analyst and a professor at Columbia University. Mr. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us here on WION.
Thank you for having me back. Always good to chat with you.
Absolutely. Now, we haven't seen a concrete plan when it comes to the immigration and border policy under Donald Trump. However, there are some terms that are being thrown around by Donald Trump as well as his now border czar, who is Tom Homan. If I could quickly just go through them, they are promising that there will be a full investigation. There'll be quote-unquote targeted arrests. Workplace enforcement is something that Homan has confirmed. Then someone threw around a term, massive air operations will take place. All of this, Trump claims, will lead to the largest deportation Americans have ever seen. Now, I want to ask you, if someone who is a tax-paying layman is watching all of this unfold, what does he understand? What should he expect?
Well, this is a big country, so what does somebody expect is a hard question. I think that there's a couple things here that are really notable. Workplace enforcement is something that a lot of Republican donors do not want. There are a lot of small, medium, and even large businesses that employ undocumented workers here because they are cheaper. Then you don't have to pay the benefits. They will work for less money. And a lot of small business people don't want ICE, Immigration Service, coming in and arresting people and then potentially fining them. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think to American ears, some of what Homan says sounds reasonable. I think most Americans, regardless of party, think that migrants who come in here and commit crimes should be kicked out of the country. Now, that's a very, very small number of people, and the Republicans have said it's a massive number, and they're being dishonest about that. Similarly, I think everyone in America would agree that someone here who is not here or even here legally, who is a threat to national security because maybe they're planning a terrorist attack or something, obviously they should be arrested or kicked out of the country or something like that. But that is the tiny tip of the giant iceberg. Most of the migrants here, other than the fact that they've entered without documents, are in fact law-abiding, and most of them are so afraid of authority that they're much more law-abiding than the average American citizen. The question here really is it was mass deportations, which is the buzzword we heard over and over again.
Right.
What does that look like? Because once you get past the easy people to deport, then you've kind of got to go house to house, business to business, and you've got to racially profile. And that would get very ugly and potentially very violent. And we will see if Trump has the wisdom not to actually pursue that policy. Just like ultimately he never really tried to build the wall, if mass deportations just recede back into a campaign slogan, that'd be the smart direction for Trump. But he's going to be in a lot of pressure to follow through on that promise.
Right, Mr. Mitchell, can we talk about the cost a little? Now, it was just last month that Tom Homan himself said that he's not aware that the plan has been written down yet. So everyone's coming up with their own estimate. One is quoting $88 billion, the other is $167 billion. There's another report saying $315 billion. Now, these are all yearly figures, but even if we pick the one that's $88 billion, the least of these three, even then, from a taxpayer's point of view, in an election where the people have voted on the lines of inflation, cost of living, and economy, when Donald Trump comes out and says just last week that no price is too high when it comes to mass deportation, how should a taxpayer view that?
Taxpayers should be concerned because the issue here is that it will balloon the federal debt. And that's something that most Republican presidents do. However, if you really want to get in the weeds on the policy side, whatever that number is, whether it's 1 or 200 billion, whatever that number is, much of that, and you said it in your introduction, is going to job creation, right? 10,000 border enforcement jobs. Those will go to overwhelmingly white people and overwhelmingly male. Some will be Latinos, but overwhelmingly men. And that's a huge part of Trump's constituency, right? Giving raises to people. So much of this is a way to funnel money to Trump's supporters, rather than to other causes that might help poor people or people of color or things like that. So it's going to cost a lot of money. Republican presidents tend to talk tough on the budget until they get in office. The deportation policy that they've talked about is terribly inflationary. If you want prices to go up in America, and that's not something I would like, but if that is your goal, the first way you do that is you get rid of the people who will work for the least money. And if you get rid of the migrant workforce, a lot of work in the United States either isn't going to get done or is going to cost more money, and that's going to be passed down to the average consumer. So there's a clash here between Trump's what people voted for on the economy, which clearly inflation was a very important part of that for many, many Americans.
Absolutely.
And the cultural issue of deportations.
All right, before I wrap up this discussion, there's this growing belief, especially among the Republicans, that if one sees consequences to illegal immigration, then people will stop knocking on your borders. Do you agree with that?
No. The push factors that are driving people to places like the United States. Now, in the Western Hemisphere, a lot of that is climate change, which we don't talk about, and actually from all over the world. They're not going away. The economic crises, the climate change crises that are pushing people out of countries where it's getting more and more difficult to make a living, to grow food, to do things like that, that's not going to change. So just kind of threatening and scaring a few people is not going to change the macro factors that are causing this.
All right, Mr. Mitchell, thank you so much for your interesting insights. Good to speak to you.
My pleasure, as always.